YouTube going live.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, cool.
YouTube going live. That's good. Guess we won't have Facebook. No worries. All right. I'm going to mute everyone and we're going to begin here in a moment. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Please, as you are joining us, we ask that you drop your location where you're tuning in from in the chat. I am Jeremiah Ojo. We will begin momentarily. Thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to know where you're tuning in from. So drop us your name, or rather not your name, but your location. Thank you, Latrice in Atlanta. Welcome, welcome. We also want to keep this dialogue interactive. So I'm going to pose a question to all of you attendees. So right before we begin, I'll ask that you fill out the poll question that you see prompted on your screen. Welcome, Gadsden in Raleigh. The question that's posed to you is, by choosing one of the three, God, Gold, and Kinfolk, how do you best define wealth? We want to pose this question to you, audience members, so you can feel engaged and part of the dialogue. We'll share the results a little bit later. Thank you so much for joining us. Get started here in a moment. If you're just joining us, please let us know where you're tuning in from. Ramona from Scotland. Oh, hello and welcome, all the way from the other side of the pond. Thank you for joining us. Others, if you're just joining us, we're asking you to do two things for us. First, let us know where you're tuning in from. Jonathan, welcome. Good to see you, brother. ATL. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and then also vote on the poll that you see in front of you. Derek, tuning in from London. Thanks for joining us. Welcome. Deborah from LA. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started here in a moment. As you guys are pouring in, again, we want to keep this conversation interactive. We'll get started momentarily, but we ask that you fill the poll question that is prompted on your screen. We want to know how you best define wealth, choosing one of the three. Monica, shout out to you in Canarsie. Hello, welcome, welcome. All right. So we're gonna get started here. We don't want to wait. I'm gonna take this moment to welcome Richard Beavers. He is the gallery owner. And Richard, you wanna say hello to everybody?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for the Artist Talk, Wealth Surrounds Me, God, Gold, Kinfolk, moderated by curator Jeremiah Ojo. I'd like to thank all three artists for participating this afternoon. We look forward to an insightful and engaging conversation. Enjoy.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. As Richard had mentioned, I am the curator, Jeremiah Ojo. I am joined here by three amazing artists that I had the pleasure of working with during this exhibition. I created this exhibition, birthed out of a conversation actually with Richard. He asked me sometime last year, we were reflecting on so many interesting things during quarantine. And he said, man, you should really curate a show. And I thought to myself, I don't know, it's a lot of work. But he's like, no, I think it'll be really great. Let's organize something that tells your story. And literally, birthed out of that conversation, came up with the concept, Wealth Surrounds Me, because Wealth Surrounds Me is actually my middle name. Olayinka means Wealth Surrounds Me in the West African language of Yoruba. So in thinking about that, all the work that I've done in the diaspora, I've reflected how are Black people performing wealth and defining wealth for themselves, but specifically, how are artists doing this? How are they articulating how they see and understand the wealth that is Blackness? And in curating and organizing this exhibition, one of the things that came to me is, there's this term called Black excellence, but I think Black excellence is Black existence. If you are Black, you're already inherently excellent. And what the wealth that we are looking to define in this conversation, we're looking at wealth through the lens of kinfolk or family. So these three amazing artists that have joined us today, Phyllis, Xavier, and Kay, will share a little bit about themselves. Phyllis, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? Hold on 1 second, Phyllis. I think you're still muted. Yeah, I think you have to unmute you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Phyllis Stevens. I'm an American quilt maker. I live in the Atlanta area. Grew up in Connecticut, so being here in the South is absolutely wonderful.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you so much. Kay.
Hello, my name is Kay Hickman. I am a visual artist, photographer. I'm based here in Brooklyn. I love your hat. My work focuses on like documentary photography, portraits, and I just love the art of storytelling, like through imagery.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing. Welcome. Xavier.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Xavier Daniels. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I've been living in Atlanta, Georgia for the past 20 years. I am I'm an oil painter, and let's see, I'm a undergraduate. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College and a graduate of Savannah College of Art and Design.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, let's begin the conversation by talking a little bit more about what this exhibition means to each of the artists. I'm sitting here live in Bed-Stuy. Check out my Brooklyn hat. Shout out to everyone here in Brooklyn. Live here in the gallery, really enjoying the work and reflecting. Again, this is the third of three conversations we've had in this Artist Talk series and focusing on this idea of wealth, but we want to look at it from the lens of family or kinfolk. So Phyllis, can you share with us for yourself, how do you define wealth first? And then also, based on how you define, do you see your community there in Atlanta expressing wealth in the same way?
So I definitely define wealth through kinfolk. Family is, for those of you who know me, know that family is everything. I probably don't have a conversation without at least mentioning my nephews at least one time in the conversation. So I want to start by telling the story that my mom told me over and over when I was growing up. She would always remind me, no matter what I was doing, if it was wrong, she would say, oh, no, 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 you can't act like that. You're a Stevens. Or, oh, no, 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 you can't get those grades. You're a Stevens. Or, no, 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 you can't do this because you're a Stevens. And her and my dad grew up together in a small town here in Georgia called in Athens, Georgia. And she said one day a storekeeper slapped my uncle. He went home and told his father. And his father came back up there, lined his boys up and said, listen, I know you think we all look alike, but these are mine. If you ever put your hands on them. And so she said she went home and she started crying. And she thought to herself, the Klan is going to kill Reverend Stevens. And she said a day went by, weeks, months, and nothing happened. She said, and I knew he was different. So her thought was, you're different. You have to be better. You're a Stevens. The funny thing is that later I was telling my aunt, this is her father, the story. And she said, she had a different take on it. She said, oh my God, he used to drive my mother crazy. She would be begging him, but don't go up there bothering those white folk. Leave them alone. So her view of what was going on was quite different. But my mom placed in me as a kid how important my family was, how much they had put inside of me, how much all of those before me had done to pave a way for me. I, in turn, now think that that's important for me to pave the way for those who come after me, pave the way for my nephews and nieces and my great nephews and nieces now, as well as paving the way for people who weren't born to my family, but are adopted into that family through relationship. I have people that are not my biological nieces and nephews, but I love and care for them the same. And that absolutely is my greatest wealth. Hands down, nothing else makes me richer. To hear their voices, their laughter, to share time with them, to be concerned about their lives and a part of their lives brings the greatest wealth that I have to the table. Absolutely. As far as my community, you know, I live in a small town right outside of Atlanta, and in the community, it still brings that kind of wealth. I have neighbors who I don't have to say I'm out of town. If they see a box, they pull it in. We're not socializing, but we're certainly taking care of each other as best we can.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I miss you and Atlanta. All the folks who are tuning in live from Atlanta as well. Let's hear from Kay. How do you define wealth, and does it differ from how you see your community? I guess our community, since we're both here in Bed-Stuy.
For me, wealth is kind of like when your cup is so full that it's running over. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's like when your cup is so full that it's running over, and like you're able to pour into people around you and like your community. And I'm not talking about entirely like money or material things, but for me, it's life and just being of service to others.
Thank you. That's huge. I think wealth is about abundance, and you can't give unless you have enough. And I think that's something that we also have to think critically within our community, because so much of us are selfless. But in a community, much like Phyllis's point, you know, if you know your neighbor, they take care of you. They are your brother's keeper. So this idea of kinfolk and family is critically important, particularly within the Black community. My dear brother, Xavier,
Yes.
tell us how you define wealth and if it differs from your community there in Atlanta, in your part of Atlanta.
I think of wealth as a little bit different. I really do think of wealth as peace of mind. And I say that because over the years, I've had so many distractions in my life, and I had a ton of different jobs and just things like that, that for me, now that after I have removed them all, I have realized that the wealth that I have gained just from having a peace of mind is just, it's like gold. And that is something that you can't pay for. There's something that you can't buy. And it truly is something that you really have to give yourself. And so to me, I truly think that is wealth.
Definitely. I think it's extremely interesting to see how, artists who create these amazing works in the exhibition have defined wealth. But we also want to look at how you've defined wealth. Clarissa has shared the poll results. You all can see here on the screen. It looks, out of the 3 selections, God, Gold, and Kinfolk, were split 50-50. God and Kinfolk. We appreciate all of you who participated in this. It seems over the week, or rather over the month, this is our 3rd session, Artist Talk for the exhibition, we've had more votes for Kinfolk. So I think majority of people within our community, particularly the ones who've been kind enough to tune in, are defining wealth through family, which I think is really remarkable. Now let's take an opportunity to look at the specific works in the exhibition and reflect on what it means to define wealth through the visuals of the artist. So Phyllis, if you could share with us a little bit about your work, Heads of State. You've explained this piece to pay homage to your fathers and uncles and male figures in your life who've made you who you are today. Can you tell us a little bit more about this work, the quilting process, using sustainable fabrics, and particularly using fabrics as a form of storytelling? Uh-oh. Phyllis, did we lose you? Okay, I don't think we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
So Heads of State is not just paying homage to my personal family or even men in my life, but kind of paying homage to men that just step up, that just, I love things when I saw a t-shirt on yesterday and the guy said, "I'm not their stepdad. I'm just the dad that stepped up." And I thought, wow, that's powerful, because we have men in the community that on a day-to-day basis are doing great things and they get no credit, no honor. They're not even doing it to be recognized. They're doing it because they see it and they see that it has to be done. So there's nothing in my thought pattern that says there's anything that's more powerful than a man that is taking his place, his rightful place. And rightful places are different for each person, but that you're coming with it, with your purpose in mind to get the job done. That to me is honorable. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're doing your best, if you're stepping up, if you're taking on other people with you. I constantly say, if you're rising to the top and you get there and you've not taken anybody else with you, then you've done something a little wrong along the way. So these people who are in charge of things and handling it and reaching for others, yeah, I'm paying homage to them. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. And what's really great about this piece, beyond sitting in front of it live, and it's a bit harder to see in the image here, but the beautiful stitch work of all of these fabrics from all different parts of the diaspora. Can you share a little bit more about your process of gathering different pieces and somewhat like collaging them into this beautiful work in the process?
So one of my, other than quilt making, my other favorite thing is travel. So I travel all over the world, and my favorite place, or my personal opinion, is that Ghana is the fabric capital of the world. That's where I get one of a kind, hand painted, highest quality cottons that you can find. So I use a lot of fabric from the continent, but I also use fabrics from other places as long as they are sustainable, they are high quality. With every selection, the first thought is, will this last forever? And then the second thought is the beauty of it. My stitching is just simply one kind of stitch. I use a satin stitch, which is a good thing because it is the strongest stitch possible. The only downside, if you make a mistake, forget about taking it out. It's just, that's a whole different process. But yeah, I love that stitch. It's thick, it's fortified. It uses a lot of thread, but the product is really great. I choose fabrics before I make the piece. When I'm selecting fabrics, I'm actually selecting each piece to tell that story, to give that vision. I'm not painting, so I can't paint a sky or a tree. So I'm choosing fabrics that once I use those fabrics, just from my fabric choices, you'll kind of feel what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's really amazing to see in person. If you hadn't had the opportunity to see the exhibition live here in the gallery, we also have a virtual view link that will also drop in the chat. But what's so great about Phyllis's work is when people come in to the gallery, because the gallery door is just to my left here, they look at it and they think it's a painting. It has this painterly quality to it. But as they get closer, they see the stitch patterning and just kind of the intricacy of how you've woven all of these patterns together and created a real sculptural feel to it as well. There's a part on the collar of the figure you see on the screen here that kind of undulates from its neck. It has like a wave pattern. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Phyllis? And why
So that particular fabric was chosen to make it feel like, when you gave me the title, I wanted I think there's, and I'm going to use this expression, there's gold in those them folks. So I think that there is such a richness that I wanted to have something. I wanted this whole piece to have like an aura about it that was illumination, that was bright like gold. Like, this is my gold. These people, these men, these heads of states that are in my life, that's my gold. So really, the thought of it came from when you first called me. And I said, no, when you first called me. And I started thinking about what I wanted to have in the show. That was my thought, is that I wanted it to exemplify the beauty of what I think about Black men. Anybody, you as well, who knows me, you know how much I love them, and I try my best to honor them every time that I can, because I really think that they are some of the most forgotten people for what they do every day, for their showing up, for their reaching out. And so this was my opportunity to do that. This is my opportunity to show some love to basically Black men.
And we love you for it. No,
Thank you.
it's much appreciated. Because also the types of fabrics you use are from all around the world, you know? So it also plays into this idea of the beauty of Black, right? The vastness.
Yes.
Shapes, sizes, and scales. So the fact that this work is an homage to Black men also kind of, with the diversity of fabric, shows the diversity of what Black men are, right? Big, small, tall. But the key is stepping up, you know, and it's really amazing to hear that and how you want to crystallize that.
Absolutely.
That
and strong. The word there is strong, mentally strong in their rescue ability. I've had, needed to be rescued for one thing or another, whether it's a leak in my house, water leak that I can't handle, and just hearing my brother's voice saying, okay, don't worry, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
That's strong. That calms me down. That makes me, that gives me peace. That's true wealth for me. I could be in a panic over something, and my nephew, when they'll just calm me right down. It's wealth that they call and check on me. It's a bad storm, Auntie. Are you doing okay? And it's funny because they take care of me, and I've never asked them to do it. It's just my richness. It's my wealth. It really is that brings those things to my door. And so I wanted to make that quilt, for the time span that I had to work in it, as rich as possible. I was telling Richard that there's a gold fabric on the sleeves, and that fabric is, I think, about $395 a yard. I wanted to put all of that in that, all of the richness, because Black men are rich in content and character. They embody that richness, that strong wealth. I'm gonna push that home as hard as I can, because that's my fuel. Really, it is. It's my fuel. It's my safe place. It's my peace. I don't have to worry. I have these wonderful men that really will protect me, really will take care of me, really will look out for me. And that, I understand that wealth is peace, because if you don't have no peace, ooh. So a lot of my peace comes from these Black men in my family, as well as Black men that I've grown to love like family. And they take care of me. They really do a good job. Richard Beavers takes care of me. He does a great job. He does a great job. And I honor him for that. He does things that, is out of the purview of an art dealer or art representative, because of that beautiful kinship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but the rest of the Black men that are on the chat here, Xavier as well, like I'm just seething with joy. I don't think I've been celebrated this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your work with us and really the world, and this piece being a love letter to Black men and the leadership, the safety, the care, the peace of mind that we are able to afford to our communities and our loved ones. Thank you, Phyllis.
My pleasure. I like that term, a love. That's exactly what it is, a love letter to all of you wonderful Black men.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you so much. And even to that point of Phyllis, shifting gears here to Kay and her work, something Phyllis made mention of is, oftentimes there are people in your life who you consider family who aren't blood, right? They're the people you choose. So Kay, can you tell us a little bit more about your work? You've been a really world-renowned photographer based here. Your work has been featured in the New York Times, Time Magazine, OK Player, the work that's to my right and also on the screen, Hold Fast, displays these beautiful young men. Can you tell us a little bit about your work as a documentary photographer and this particular work, Hold Fast?
For this particular work, I was just walking around the community. I was actually finishing up an art job, community art job around the city. And I don't know, I just saw these boys just sitting on the stoop and just like talking about life. And as I approached them, they just started talking about like what they wanted to be when they grew up. And it was just so heartwarming to see just like the, the happiness, the joy stemming from them. And I just kind of wanted to preserve that, the camaraderie amongst them all.
Yeah. And I think it's really beautiful how you capture this. You know, particularly, you know, they're holding the basketball and they're posed, you know,
Right.
pride.
And it was all natural too. Like I didn't say, you know, okay, you do this, you do that. It just flowed like, you know, naturally.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of you know, seeing us in our environment just being, right?
Right.
No expectation, relating to, you know, just another sister who's coming by, and they were able to connect with you, and I think that shows quite well on this image, particularly because, you know, this was taken here in Bed-Stuy, right?
Right. Back in 2018, I believe. Yeah.
And it's wonderful because as I ride my bike through the neighborhood, you know, this is what I see, you know, wealth
Right.
of kids and family members just out, particularly in the summer.
Mhm.
For those of you who haven't been to Brooklyn in the summer, it is probably the greatest place on earth, between the block parties, the festivals, bands,
Most definitely.
thing, which I
That's
know.
kind of actually what I started taking photos like much more when I moved to Bed-Stuy, because I just love the culture and stuff of the area, like, you know, the block parties and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like the longer I lived here, the more I saw like things started changing. But I just kind of wanted to preserve, you know, what the community that we had here.
Yeah. And within that, you've taken images of several other folks
Hmm.
around New York and alike. Can you tell us about this image, Dom?
Yes, Dom, he's like a awesome photographer, and he's always so like lighthearted and just like giving. But this particular day, it was like we were at a protest actually, and that's why his gaze is so you know, serious.
Yeah.
But it was right after, I guess, Anton Sterling and Philando Castile had passed. So you could just like feel the gravity of the day, and, you know, and everything that was happening.
Yeah, and it's interesting, kind of using this lens around Black men and family. Phyllis made reference to men as being protectors. Seeing
Right.
and having his daughter on his shoulder like that, like,
Mhm.
you know, she's up there perched. She looks like she feels safe, and he's like, "Try me if you want to," kind of.
Yep.
Love the energy of that photo, because there's a tenderness you see from her, but a serious kind of posturing you see from him with his you know, his side eye. We all know the side eye.
Yep. Most definitely.
Yeah, it's a really great image.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and this photo was taken over in East New York.
Okay.
And this one was like this one isn't posed as well. It was just like I think we were saying bye or parting ways or something, and like she had turned back. So I had to be like quick with this photo and capture this image. Yeah, but I just love the way the sun was like peering through her hat, and just like how warm and friendly her smile was.
Yeah. And I think the beauty of the medium of photography, being a photographer myself, is being able to capture that moment and the immediacy of it, right?
Right.
Because, you know, everyone thinks they're a photographer, quote unquote, but it takes a lot to make an image and not take an image, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we all just pick up our phone and, you know, snap away. But I think the beauty of your work is you capture that moment.
And being intentional. Yeah.
Right? You're waiting on it, you know, because really great portrait and documentary photography is really anticipating the moment and saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I see this light coming. She's going to turn her head," and be right there to capture it with your shutter. And
Right.
I think it's really beautiful how you've been able to do it through these images. Can you tell us a little bit more about, like, I guess, being a documentary photographer here in New York? Like, what are the things that you're drawn to specifically in looking to capture moments and time?
Let's see. I of course love telling you know, stories of you know, our stories, because I know we're misrepresented a lot in the media and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of want to show like a more human side of us, I guess, or I don't know.
Yeah. And with that, I know you've been working on a number of different photographic projects and things like
Right.
that. You mind sharing a little bit of?
Oh, sure. Well, over the summer, I photographed, the protests that were happening. Some of that work actually got published, as well as documenting like the height of the COVID pandemic, I guess the first wave of it back in April. Me and a photojournalist slash poet activist, we went across the 5 boroughs and documented New York City, just to show how the different communities and people in like New Yorkers dealt with the pandemic.
Yeah, and it's really powerful to be able to capture those moments and tell those stories, because part of being able to receive that energy on the image is giving it yourself, like creating an environment of comfort for the subject. And and looking through all your images, I know when we were planning the show, we were going through a couple. I was like, "Oh, that's good. No, let's do this one."
Right.
I remember seeing.
Yeah, you did an amazing job just selecting which ones kind of like work together, and like you have to have that dialogue between the works. So
yeah, and it's I think the beauty of it, and for those who haven't been to the show, there's a really great composition to a lot of the work. You can kind of see the image, half of the image of Hold Fast, the right here, but the young boy here with his hands up, he has a flat top, and there are 3 or 4 other images in painting and the like of young men and women with a similar hairstyle. In thinking about like how our community is connected, from Atlanta to Bed-Stuy to South Africa, this hairstyle is something that is centric to us and how we choose to express ourselves, regardless of language and the like. So I've really enjoyed being able to explore the visual cues, or rather the visual commonalities that have been captured through all the artists that are in the exhibition. So thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
Thank you.
So let's talk to my main man, Xavier, down there in Atlanta. You have 2 works in the exhibition, the first being this work, Prayer is Not a Formal Affair, and then another work that we'll talk about in a moment, but both stem from this series, Exploring Brotherhood. Can you share with us more about this work and the ideas that it's exploring?
Sure. My work is about brotherhood. Brotherhood has been a cornerstone of my life. Being a graduate of an all-male HBCU, where the group is a younger group of men, and then afterwards, I was also a firefighter for 13 years with a large group of Black men also, but the age group was an older set of Black men. And so I was able to experience 2 different sets of brotherhood that have really instilled a lot in my life and how I view the world. And so with my work, I really try to show what men, especially Black men, are internalizing today with all of the things that are going on with like Black Lives Matter, or just the different stereotypes that Black men have, just what we see in television and movies or in songs, that my work is more of a call to action, or also just to show just what men are thinking about ourselves, because people don't tend to ask Black men, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? No one asks that, but then they continuously they talk about us as a group, but not as individuals. And so because of that, this particular work, Prayer is Not a Formal Affair, I really use the body language of the figure as just to show a vulnerable side of Black men, because you got to think, as we saw the George Floyd happening live on television and on the internet, you no one asks, okay, so how do you as a Black man feel after seeing someone who looks like you die? And so that is what this piece is about. And I use the body language just just to show a vulnerable side of Black men because Black men have various ranges. We're all different, and we also have emotions and feelings. And so that's what this piece is about.
Yeah, it's quite honestly a crowd and attendee favorite. I know there are a number of great pieces in the exhibition, but people have been particularly drawn to this. There's a tender quality to it that's very sensual, but also engaging, you know, and in understanding this idea of brotherhood and, you know, the series you're working through in search of the fraternal, brotherhood is this idea of camaraderie, right? You can't be a brother alone. There isn't brotherhood without another brother, right? And to your point of seeing all that transpired last year, and that is ongoing in our society of Black men being murdered, there needs to be that brotherhood publicly saying, I hurt, I feel, I need you. And I think that's one of the elements that people have been drawn to this work. And a lot of the work in the exhibition is that vulnerability. In the next piece, We Wander as I Wander, it's somewhat emblematic of brotherhood. When I look at it, I see these two figures and think they are brothers. Can you tell us a little bit more about this work?
Sure. Well, again, just speaking as a Black male, it is my interpretation of just what brotherhood looks like, because brotherhood to me doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be together. And it's more of a spiritual version of brotherhood where you can feel like you have your brother with you, although they may be on the other side of the country or the other side of town. They can also be with you in spirit. And so because of that, this is my interpretation of like a Black male who can represent any and all Black men facing straight forward and also feeling supported by his brother. Their brother may be their blood brother. It may be their fraternity brother. It could be their co-worker, or for me, for example, it may be a firefighter buddy of mine that I was in a fire with. The list goes on, but the brotherhood remains the same. And so this is my interpretation of that, and also just showing the support that I believe Black men can give each other to for us to help to fix our own issues that we have as Black men.
Yeah. It's a really great image and beautifully painted. The details of the work are really amazing because like a lot of, or not like too many contemporary painters, it's all of your work is oil on canvas. Can you tell us a little bit about using that medium and why you choose oil on canvas?
Sure. Well, I've studied fine art my entire life, so I'm definitely interested in the mastery of oil paint. First, because I studied it since I was 10 years old, but then also, like many, have visited many museums in Europe and the absence of Black figures. And so because of that, I paint in oil paint really just because it's more of a classical style of art that I'm interested in, but I'm a contemporary guy. And so when you combine the two, this is what you get. It is both of my interests.
Yeah, it's really great work. And I think looking at the work, particularly oil on canvas, beyond the way that you communicate the vulnerability and the gaze and the composition of the actual work, but the materials, like oil on canvas is a very kind of sensual presentation, right? It's a very smooth like surface.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike acrylic on canvas, or acrylic has kind of this plastic-like quality to it. This is something that I think drives home that same level of vulnerability because you're using oil, a very kind of sensual medium on a surface. It gives this really nice tenderness to it. So we appreciate you so much for sharing more about your work. And we're looking forward to seeing more with you as you will have an upcoming show later on this year, which we're very excited about. So thank you, Xavier.
Thank you.
So let's shift gears here. I appreciate all of the comments that you all have been pouring in the chat. I want to take this moment to actually give the artists a chance to talk amongst themselves. I've had the great joy of curating and had so many conversations with each of them and even facilitating this dialogue, but I want to actually hide myself, allow three of you to talk with each other. You know, what similarities, what elements through the different stories of your work and the things that you've been thinking about. I know a common thread has been male vulnerability, family that you choose and that wasn't necessarily through blood. I want you all to have a dialogue about those things. And yeah, so I'll let you all take it from here.
Okay, well, what I saw, the commonality, what I was intrigued with was how we were all telling our story for such a time as this, you know, documenting the world that we live in the way that we see it. And I saw that in Kay's work, and I saw that in Xavier's work. And I actually went online and looked both of you up, and especially UK. I was looking at some of your photography, and I thought this is so hilarious. I was like, wow, I like her eye, because her eye kind of see like I see, you know. So I thought that was cool. And then Xavier, I went and looked and read your bio and the passion about brotherhood and all the things that you said today and that you had said in your writing. And so here's what we had in common. We were creating what we were feeling. Mm-hmm. And so I felt your creation. And that's so cool when you can stand there and feel it. That was my experience when I took the time to discover who both of you were.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I got the same feeling though, definitely. You know, just like a passion and a love for the, you know, the subject that we're putting out there and delving into. Yeah.
I will pose a question to you all. I'm curious to know, what do you all think is our job as an artist? What is our main job as an artist is? What do you all think?
We're historians, we're documenters. We tell what's going on for the future. We leave a footprint, like you can, like hieroglyphics, like this is what was happening, you know, millions of years ago. We document the story, the visual story. Let me let you see what I saw while I was there. Mm-hmm. Point blank.
Nina Simone like quoted it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nina Simone said it the best, like, you know, artist's job is to document the times.
Absolutely. That's it. That's it.
My view, I think, is to document your feelings in the moment. Mm-hmm. And so, like you mentioned, Phyllis, to be a historian, I totally agree. But I tend to think of it from a more of a emotional standpoint. So it is about documenting the history, but then also, how do you personally feel about what's going on, and leaving that as your mark. That's my view.
Well, of course you do it through your feelings. You know, we've all been in a room where something went on, and when you leave, you're talking with your friends and all of you saw it differently. Mm-hmm. Or better yet, closer to home, looking at a piece. And what I think about the story in the piece. When I look at it, that's 3 or 4 different stories. So not only are you putting your feelings on canvas, but you're invoking different feelings that are personal with other people. You know, art is emotional. It's passionate. It's crazy. You know, I'm nuts. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm in my studio at 4, and I never get tired of it. It's, you know, of course I go to bed at 6. No, I'm just kidding. Pretty much, but I never ever get tired of it. I get tired, but I never get tired of it.
Yes.
And
Right.
that's really beautiful, because years ago I was with a friend, and maybe that day I heard her say like 8 times, I hate my job. And I thought, God, what a blessing that I mean, really, I couldn't even think at the moment what a greater blessing was to do what I loved and actually make a living at it. You know, that's extremely cool.
Okay, I have a question for you.
For me?
Is there a particular time of day you like to go out and shoot?
Not really. It's for me, it's like a whim. Like whenever I feel like going out and documenting. Yeah. Or if there's like a particular event that I want to photograph, you know, of course I'll set the time for that. But yeah, it varies.
Okay.
Other thoughts, reflections?
Well, I'm going to shoot in here. You know, my thought is that I wanted to thank you, Jeremiah, for giving us the opportunity within the realms, within the parameters that you set, even in your title. It was thought-provoking and heartfelt. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very thoughtful.
Yeah, it's I really appreciate that. Auntie Phyllis, she's my auntie, not by blood.
Right. That's right. That's right.
You know, the great pleasure of being able to organize exhibitions. I mean, I too have been blessed with the Brotherhood of working with Richard, which has been tremendous. He's a father, a big brother. We argue, we laugh, we eat, we drink, we do everything. You know, we spend a lot of time together, and it's been wonderful to be a part of the gallery family. So when I think about this idea of wealth and kinfolk, I think about this, right? It's like, this is the 3rd Sunday I've been able to have family conversations with, you know, family I don't get a chance to see all that often. I know many of you, we talk here and there, but it's been busy, you know, these last couple of months and weeks. And even though quarantine is happening, it's like you relish in the people that you really want to connect with. And so much of your work reminds me of my relationship with each of you. And that's the joy of being able to curate and organize an exhibition. You know, I'm not just choosing the work because it looks good. Sure, all of you are tremendously talented, but it's like, I'm also looking at work that reminds me of you, your spirit, your energy, and what I think that uniquely offers the world. And your version of Black. That's something that I've been saying reoccurringly, because Blackness is so vast and diverse. To be able to see photography, to see oil painting, to also see quilting and fabrics just integrated to tell these stories has been a lot of fun. And just relishing in the idea of family that you can choose, and the fact that I've been able to choose each one of you, and y'all chose me back because you said yes. It's a great joy. So I want to take this opportunity to engage with another side of our family, those who have tuned into the webinar here and the Artist Talk. So we have a number of questions that have been bubbling in the chat. I'm going to have Clarissa recap some of the questions we had come in the chat, and then I'll go over those in the Q&A. Clarissa?
Hi, everyone. So we have a question for Phyllis. And Phyllis, this question is, how do you compare your work a decade ago and now? Which is your favorite quilt of all your work and why?
So with anything, the longer you do it, the better you get. So that's how it's just time. You just learn, the process. You actually create new ways to learn the process. And so my favorite work changes. Something will happen. And I'll say, wow, this is my favorite work. And then, a year later, and sometimes this is hilarious. I was at a dear friend's house who has a quilt that I hadn't seen in maybe 10 or 15 years. And when I saw it, I said, oh, I forgot how much I love this piece. So it changes.
Great. And just to let you know, that question was posed by Cindy Edwards.
Oh, okay. She tell her in that case, tell her quilt is my favorite.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know so many of you and really all of us have family and friends that have tuned in to support us. So please keep on bringing in your questions and ask questions that we don't know anything about these artists, because that's what keeps the discussion lively. So we do have a couple comments and additional questions in the Q&A box. Hyacinth, I guess, commented she wasn't able to include her comment or vote during the poll, and her answer to the poll, out of God, gold, and kinfolk, she best defines wealth through God. So thank you for responding and sharing. Also, have a friend in the gallery, also our intern, Jamal Love, who's none but love. He has a question posed to all of you. Has your creation process changed over time? If so, how? I think Phyllis has already spoke to that specifically. So Xavier, Kay?
Well, I would just say yes, my process has changed over time. It has evolved to a more emotional, more of a sensual technique. Whereas before, maybe 10 years ago, I was working in acrylic paint, but it dried entirely too fast. And so when I switched over to oil paint, I was able to spend more time with the paint because it dries extremely slow. And so I was able to maneuver the paint the way that I saw fit. And that's when I began to not necessarily have fun with it, but began to manipulate it in a way to where I was able to build a relationship with my materials, and the outcome is what you have today.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with them both, Phyllis and Xavier. It's like the more you do, or the more you practice like your craft, like the better you'll get, or the more defined your work gets. Mm-hmm. So like for me, getting new equipment and or subject matter, and like what I'm photographing and like the way I'm processing what's going on, around us. Yeah. So yes, definitely.
That actually brings up a question that I have for all of you. How much of what's going on in our world today, quarantine, Black Lives Matter, I mean, all these things that are happening, pandemic, how much of that changes the direction of your current projects and or things that you have been actively working on, I guess either ongoing? Do these new current events as they pop up, do they heavily influence, what you're painting, what you're photographing, what you're stitching or sewing?
Absolutely. When, you'll be going through and you'll see something on the news and it'll, what I call, it stops me in my tracks. I got to pay attention to that. And so when I go to the studio, I take that with me. You know, it's inevitable that, you know, the pandemic has changed my life. It's inevitable that Black Lives Matter has changed my life. You know, I've been around for probably longer than all of you. Well, not probably, but so for me, it's a different experience. You know, I remember coming home from school and my mother crying because Martin Luther King was killed. You know, I remember that like it was yesterday. And so now, you know, some almost, I don't know, 50 years late, more than 50 years later, you know, I'm experiencing this still. So yeah, it does something to me. It does something to me. It changes my work. You know, I have to make a conscious effort actually to say, I'm going to do something else because it can overtake you.
I would say that for me, my work, it actually has made me stand even more still on my opinion. Because when I speak about brotherhood in my work, I truly mean what I mean. And the things that I think that we as Black men should do and the things that we need, it really just makes me feel like, okay, yes, this is exactly what I'm trying to say. This is what I mean. And this is what I feel like we should do, because because the same thing continuously happen.
Yeah, and for me, like it, especially dealing with the over the summer, just like coming out of quarantine and then just photographing the Black Lives Matter movement, what's going on over the summer. Like, because of quarantine, like I had taken a break with photography. I wasn't creating as much. But then, you know, when the protests happened, like it kind of forced me to go out and just like document what was going on. It's like I couldn't just like sit by and not. So it kind of gave me purpose. Yeah.
Well, we have some more questions here. Ebony Daniels asked a question specifically for Xavier. Out of the two works that are in the exhibition, which two
which are my favorite? Speaking of my work in particular, or all the works that are in the exhibition? I didn't really know.
Out of the two, the Wander piece and then the Prayer Is Not a Formal Affair, which of the two are your favorite? Or which one of them is your favorite? Excuse me.
Oh, okay, got it. I would say I do not have a favorite as the artist. I love them both. And that is just because they are truly just putting my emotions and my feelings out on canvas. So that's my answer. It's hard to choose.
Spoken like a true parent, an artist parent. Like. Thank you. Additional questions here. Monica asked, was there a major life experience that solidified your decision to become an artist and to work in the specific media you've chosen? I guess this is posed to all of you, so anyone can jump in here.
So when I was a little girl, I grew up in Connecticut, but when I was a little girl, I spent every summer in Athens, Georgia. And in Athens, you could, you know, throw rocks, roll tires, or you could quilt. And so that was the start, maybe when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I always loved it. Even to this day, my favorite quilts are the ones that my grandmother and I made together. I still have those. And there was a time in my life where everything was wrong. And a friend of mine said, you know, why don't you sell some of your quilts? And I said, I don't think anybody will buy them. Because here's the truth. I had never seen an art quilt before. I've been doing them for years, but I had never visually seen an art quilt. And then the first time I saw an art quilt was when I was in Africa, when I was in West Africa. And they're you know, they write and put stories inside of them. But for years, I thought was, you know, I was just doing this. So I actually do believe with everything in me that I was born to do this. I created a quilt for my grandmother. And when I gave it to her, she almost passed out. And I was like, okay, I know it's not that nice. And she ran to her cupboard, unwrapped a package, and pulled out a quilt that looked very much like mine, except for the fabrics were different, but very, very much like the one I gave her. And she said to me, my grandmother made this quilt for me.
Wow.
And I almost fell out. So I really do, with everything in me, believe that I was born just to do this.
I would have to agree with you, Phyllis. I've been an artist my entire life, but this journey for me began when others were telling me that I was an artist. And since I was a child, art teachers were telling me that I had these special skills and I was talented in this way. And I didn't know, I was just a child. But then as I got older and being exposed to different things and other people were also telling me the same thing. And they always said, you are definitely an artist. And I felt like I was, but I was getting the reinforcement from others telling me that, and that actually just made it true for me. And then the older that I got, I just said, you know what, there is nothing else in this world that I'm interested to do. I am an artist, will always be an artist, will die as an artist, and even once I die, I will still be an artist. And that's just what it is.
Yes. I agree. I definitely feel like being an artist actually chose me. Just from a young age, I actually started painting instead of like with photography. And, you know, I didn't really think that I could be an artist as a full-time job. So I, you know, did the workforce for a bit. And then once I got back to my creative side, like I picked up a camera and just like fell in love with the medium. Definitely. And Phyllis, I have a question for you. Like when you were doing quilts with your grandmother, was it the same type of work or was it more traditional?
So, you know, Richard always thinks that makes me different because I'm an excellent traditional quilt maker. So it was traditional, but even then, as a little kid, when I look at the ones that we made together, I always know what my squares were because I would put like a little schoolhouse or a little family. So even then I would go, my grandmother would say, you know, that's not how we're doing it. I'd say, it's too boring the way you're doing it.
I love it. So you put your own spin on it.
Right. So we would do all these squares and then she would put them together and actually create the quilt and send it to me for Christmas. So, I now have like every last one of them on my bed because it just gives me a whole different kind of comfort.
Definitely.
But yeah, even then I was looking at one the other day and I was like, oh, my dog or horse, I couldn't tell what it was. It's been ready to fall off. I need to repair that. So, and so in the middle or on the side of her beautifully done, perfect, you know, quilting is geometry, so it's perfect.
Right.
You know, in her perfect, you see these three little squares. One has a house, one has, I think, a dog, but it could be a horse. Then one has a boy and a girl, because at that time I have three brothers, but at that time I only had one. So yeah, and she would still put mine in.
Aw, that's beautiful.
We have a couple more questions here. This one again is posed to everyone. This question comes from Deborah, depending on pronunciation. What are each of you working on currently? What are your thoughts on future artistry? What are, I guess, your next projects or current projects you're working on?
Okay. I'm working on finishing up. I'm doing actually, I kind of work in series. So I normally do anywhere from 3 to 10 pieces on a theme. And so the piece that you have is from my Mask, M-A-S-K series. And I plan to finish up one today. So hopefully, I'll get to do 2 or 3 more of these. Mask.
Also, when you finish up, send me an image.
Wait. You should ask Richard about my images. I'll wait until it gets shot.
Don't do that. Your work is great. I look forward to seeing it. Other Xavier K.
For me, I kind of wanted, there's like this interesting like juxtaposition going on around New York City that I want to document. Like there's a lot of stores that have become like vacant, and like a lot of homeless have been like kind of perched in like odd places, and like they're more prominent around New York. So I kind of want to document the time that, that New York is going through right now. And I also want to do a project like honoring Black women. So those are the 2 that I'm working on now.
Yeah, definitely, especially honoring Black women. We talked a lot about brotherhood and male figures and male representation, in this discussion framed around family. But I think, you can't really, nothing happens unless a Black woman is involved.
And know that.
That's facts.
Black comes from a Black woman. The dynamics of sisterhood, I think, is an important conversation that needs to be told from your perspective. I think the beauty of art in different media, we can all tell stories about kinfolk, family that's chosen or given, but there's so many different ways to display and communicate that. So we look forward to seeing that. And like I told Phyllis, when you're done, show me some images.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm working on a series of figurative oil paintings where I explore the vastness of brotherhood, and the series is titled In Search of the Fraternal.
Looking forward to seeing more on that. I've seen some additional work that Xavier has done, and it's amazing. There's a lot more he definitely has coming up, and we're excited to present some of that work in the near future. A couple other questions here. Joseph asked for Phyllis, what inspired your very first quilt and this vehicle for expression? I think you already talked about that with your grandmother, but is there anything else you want to share on that?
No, I think, no, I'm good.
Thank you. And then another question here in the chat from Rachel, my special somebody. She asked, Phyllis, how do you select materials for your quilts? Does each selection tell a story? I think you've already answered that.
Each selection tells a story. Yeah, they do. It does. And when people go shopping with me, people go anywhere with me for fabric. I just know, I'm not going back and forth. I go through the store. I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take that. 5 yards, 2 yards. It's a crazy process.
Wow.
I just know. And sometimes though, I get this fabric and I have nothing in mind to do with it. Nothing. But I know that I'm going to use it.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of being an artist. You become a collector of things and ideas. You may never actualize or manifest it in a way, but you need to harness it. I know that's something as an artist and a creative person I've always struggled with over the years. I've been tagged as being a hoarder because I see stuff and I'm like, I need it around me, right? There's a possessive nature around an idea that's sparked, or even Xavier and I were going through some galleries here in New York yesterday, and just seeing other artists' work, you're like, ooh, I really like that. I need to, take a picture of that or analyze their process, because you're just constantly kind of scanning the world for inspiration or different things to kind of push you to think more creatively. So it's great to be an artist, and it's great to be alive during this time.
Yes, it is.
Especially.
Definitely.
This is the point where we bring this to a close. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and we appreciate Phyllis, Kay, Xavier for all joining us for this conversation. Special thanks to Richard Beavers for hosting us both in the gallery and here online. We encourage you all to stay in touch with us. If you haven't had a chance to see the gallery exhibition, Wealth Surrounds Me, God, Gold, and Kinfolk, I encourage you to do one of two things. One, go to our Instagram, follow us at Richard Beavers Gallery, or Ilekunwa, which means our door in Yoruba. Both in our bios, you can find a link to either register to make an appointment to come to the gallery. We'd love to see you here. Clarissa is dropping all this information in the chat, so it's easy for you to access. And then the second thing, we also have a virtual view of the gallery. These three wonderful artists were so kind enough to record audio that accompanies a lot of their work. So whether you're in person, there's QR codes where you can scan and listen to the audio talking specifically about their work in different ways, many of the things they've already shared in this conversation, but also additional tidbits. And you're able to see the entire exhibition virtually. So thank you again for joining us. Look for more, follow us on the socials, and please wear a mask and wash your hands.
Will do. Will
Right.
do.
Take care.
Yes, be safe,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Be safe.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.